Okay, well, welcome everyone to today's meeting. We have Michael Lewrick over here with us to answer our question on this fantastic book, which is the Design Thinking Playbook. We've been reading this for a month now, and it has been a fascinating experience for us. So again, we'll start with a little introductions, but just to lay down some ground rules. We are always respectful of each other's views. I am recording this session, so if you don't want your face to appear on the recording, please turn off your cameras. Use chat for ideas and questions. And we generally suggest everyone to talk between meetings. So this is the final meeting of this book. We have the next book ready, which I will be talking about at the end of it. And always please send us feedback and suggestions on how we can improve the book club. Before we begin, Michael has very kindly given us this 50% discount on the templates there. So this there's this code. I will be posting this on the on our Meetup page and our LinkedIn page as well. So you will have that over there. So just some introductions. My name is Himanshu Jain. I am a lecturer at University of Westminster, and I'm the co-convener of the PM Book Club. Nick.
And I'm Nick Lambro, the other co-convener, again from the University of Westminster. And that is it, essentially. We are lovers of books. This is a project management book club, so we are honored with authors, and we ask questions, hopefully about the love of books and about project management. We always squeeze that in the questions, and this is who we are. We do ask people if they are project managers or designers or something. This is our third meeting about the book, but if anybody wishes to introduce themselves or say hello to the author, you are welcome. Otherwise, we'll move on. This is the voluntary part.
Hi, I just want to say hi. I'm David. I'm qualified business analyst, project manager, and I work as a consultant. I'm very much passionate about the agile delivery, and I did enjoy the book, and just want to say hello.
Hello. Perfect. Thanks for joining in.
So before we move on, Michael, would you like to say a couple of lines, a couple of things?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you for having me. I think it's great, that you have like a really kind of previous meetings about the books discussing, and then you're reaching out, because usually nowadays more like a webinar. So I'm presenting slides, and it's like kind of a black box. And sometimes, there's like 10-minute slot afterwards for questions. So, and usually, there's no one's kind of active asking, and people are later on reaching out and having all these big questions about the topics and how to apply design thinking, what's the mindset, and even, how you run your projects was design thinking. So I think there's a great opportunity that we come together, we have this direct contact, and you studied over the last weeks a book, it's even better, even you applied it somehow, and now we can have really a good discussion about it. So I really look forward, to answer your questions, but also, to get challenged, because Niklas was saying, we have a lot of things we like to challenge you on. So go ahead, I'm happy to take your challenges as well.
Thanks, Michael.
Lovely. We're doing the design thinking playbook, but we have noticed with Himanshu that actually there seems to be a theme in the books we have picked up. and have had the grace of the authors here. We have done inspired, how to create technical products customers love. And then we did the workflow, Tame Your Workflow book. And we are finding that there is a convergence of ideas and a lot of, so this idea about product design always ends up with some sort of agility, first of all, and the word empathy and cooperation and all that. And we thought we would remind our readers that actually we've got a package here of books that we, without realizing, we have now sort of moved into. And it is very interesting to see the perspectives and also the screaming. All three books, and I hope you will point to that, but the screaming of the authors of we need change and how we're going to fight this change and are we going to go into the new world. There is a new world out there, and how shall we do that? And again, the word agile comes into mind, and the critical chain ideas of tame flow and taking away the constraint, what is the constraint bit, and the inspired book that had made sure that we had design thinkers to design properly things, always with the user. And then your book comes in, and as a color book and all that, it appears to be less serious, but actually it is more serious than the other two. And we don't know how you managed to do that. So we thought we would throw that slide in because it is a concept and conceptual world. We don't think it is a coincidence that these books have been written at a similar time frame. We are moving ahead with sort of these were these books. The book itself has three parts. First of all, to the understanding of design thinking. Let me take 2 minutes to give you our impression of the book, and I hope you will. I hope you will not correct me. But any mistake I make, I wish you correct me. Yeah. So you start from the human being, the design, and the people and the users and all that. Then you move into transforming the organization, and you almost move from even emptying a room and putting stacks of chairs and creating an environment for the organization to work. And you then you try and go all the way to the top of the organization, because if the top does not agree, then it doesn't work very well. So understanding came up with the main word here, as far as I can see, is empathy. You are empathizing, and you are creating for the customer and the user, and the words co-creation and generation of ideas comes up. And then you move on to the organization bit, if you want. One thing, you've got two examples, actually. I think you've got precisely two examples in the book. Which is the La Mama chair as a design concept, or something that you are sort of looking at and saying, this is a beautiful thing. For those of you who do not know this chair, this has been inspired by Gaetano Pesce taking a shower, and he had a sponge in his hand, and he realized how the sponge, you squeeze it and then it takes up its shape. And this chair is not what you see, but it comes in a small package, essentially. And when you open it, it just takes its own shape. And that is the idea. Actually, this one is a miniature chair, but the picture shows it very bigger. And then on the other side, the other example you have is the Carlton bookcase, which is a bookcase, and yet it doesn't look like bookcase, and it looks like a child's Lego sort of creation and all that. And I think this is what is inspiring you, this kind of idea. These are ideas that almost come out of nowhere, essentially. So I thought we should remember the world that you are in, because we are in a more boring world that doesn't see these things. And then in the second part, you moved on to the organization, I think. and in your journey, you created human beings like the T-shaped person, and the sort of this idea that you have to be broad and specialized at the same time. And next to this T person, you then created the pi person, the P person, who is a T person with leadership ability. So somewhere along the line, this free thinking, if you wish, has to be organized. And that is where you took us, always with concepts and always with process at the same time. And you then changed the organization. You said we need to change the organization, and you took us very nicely and slowly into the second part. Actually, I noticed the parts themselves were becoming smaller as we went on. The first part is bigger, the last part, the most important part. And you've got this idea about design thinking, which you impress us on all the way from understanding, observing, and all that, to the idea, to the prototype, to the testing, and all these are back and forth, and all that. And that then, you then start talking about the idea itself, and the idea is you've got the problem space where we've got a lot of choices, and then we converge. And you mention the Apple guy being very good at recognizing the moment when the flannel has to sort of come back. These are beautiful pictures that you have given us, either by drawing them or by writing about them. And then in the solution space, this double diamond Alexander pattern, actually, of thinking and all that, and your ideation, prototyping, testing, defining point of view process is all there. This is another picture again from the book, I think. And then you moved on to the organization, interdisciplinary, you visualize ideas. We are now talking about stories, and you become a narrator, both visual and writing narrator, designing good stories, and all these, I think, are very powerful thing. We are thinking with Himanshu, for example, that we can create a course, a whole course, by actually getting people to just sit together and create. It is a beautiful thing. And then in the third part, I think you become very, very serious, and I hope we will discuss that because you then marry design thinking with systems thinking, and then with ecosystems. And from the little discussion we had earlier, the ecosystem is the future that you are now writing about. So we will be asking, I hope, questions on that. I think that is a summary of the book, which I made also maybe for you to correct us, but also for those who maybe are here for the first time and did not, because we do like people visiting and popping in just to have a listen. But now AI is taking over, essentially, and you still fight for the human in there. So I think that is the book itself, and for which we thank you. And if anybody wishes, we can start asking questions. Does anybody have any question?
Before everyone is asking, thank you very much for the summary, because I think it was a good summary about what we like to achieve as a book, giving kind of a overview about the basic understanding of design thinking in the beginning, but then also look into how everything evolved over the years. And the two examples were the furniture parts, it's also how a change happened, how we experienced design, because it was like purely functional before the 60s and 50s. And then we had like this great idea about creating all the experiences. So experiences about packing and unpacking, having kind of also kind of nice design, how things look like. And so a lot of things came together about having a different way of looking into design and how to approaching it. And this was really kind of a transition also in design thinking, how to include different parts, and how to go into the next levels. And we see the next thing now for the last 10 years, combining like systems thinking and design thinking becomes really necessary in the digital transformation, because we're looking into complex systems. So it's like IoT, there's artificial intelligence, big data analytics, there's ecosystem design. So basically we can't handle it by itself with design thinking. We need all these disciplines together, combining them to come up with great solutions. And in the end of the book, there's actually one of my favorite visualizations. It's kind of this double diamond, looking into design thinking, systems thinking, and big data analytics. So for me nowadays, when we're talking about digital services and products, ecosystems, unique value propositions, all these things have to come together, and this is probably one of the core capabilities we need as project manager, project owners, that we can play with all these disciplines and not just say, I'm a good design thinking expert, I'm good in systems thinking. You have to know all these disciplines, and applying the right mindset at the appropriate time to be successful in the end. Just to comment.
Indeed, and that is a challenge. Please, anyone has a question, just ask it. I will ask
Ting has a question.
I'll go, please.
Ting, did you have a question? Okay. Doesn't look like it.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to make a comment, though. I mean, to add to what you mentioned, Nick. I think this whole book is very nicely divided into three parts. The first part talks about the past, about what design thinking is and what have we been doing so far, and then we talk about transforming the organizations, which is happening in present, and then we sort of talk about the future. So that's a nice transition from history to sort of start looking in the future. And I also find that this book has at least two different levels. I mean, this book introduces concepts in those how might we sections, and then after explaining those concepts, then we talk about practical stuff. How can we do it? So it's almost like a reference manual on how to do design thinking after. So and that's why I think it's aptly called Playbook, because we'll sort of keep on referring back to it again and again as we try to sort of implement design thinking.
And I think it's an important point what he's saying, this is really meant to be a playbook. And I think a lot of people call books a playbook, but they're not really playbooks, because I think it's kind of a fashion thing to call them. And we had really the idea about that you're trying out things as a concept, you can play with, you try it out with your team, trying out to get more insights, you're applying it, you're coming back and basically reflecting, what did work well, where we have to change something. And then you make probably a couple of, learning steps, saying next time we like to apply in a similar way, we do it differently. And this is kind of a dynamic process. So in all my tools and frameworks, they're not written in stone. It's more like, you can apply them, you have to adapt them to your culture, to the situation you're in. And I'm always the first one, taking things apart. So if I see any kind of business model canvas, the first thing I do, I take it this, and put them apart, and customize to what I like to achieve. I'm renaming things, and put it into like something I like to use, and I think it's appropriate. And I think this is also kind of a change how we go into management concepts, because in the past it was really kind of one concept, you were learning it by heart, you were applying exactly in this way. And now in this transition, it's more kind of, well, this is an idea, it's inspiring you how to use it, and then basically you adapt to your needs. And of course, sometimes you need shortcuts, sometimes you have to take more time, to go a little bit deeper. So it really depends, how wicked the problem is, what kind of pre-knowledge you have, and also kind of what is the situation you like to work and collaborate with other people in,
Absolutely.
There's one question I will ask, sort of traditional questions, if you wish. We are talking about teams and the creativity of teams. We've seen two very lovely designs that we picked up from your book, of two named designers. These designers, do they work with teams, or is there still a space for the individual? Or are we talking about designs for business purposes as opposed to designs for the sake of design? Where is there a line somewhere? Are we losing the individual?
I don't think we're losing. I think it's more like bringing in your best capabilities to make it happen, you know. And that's the reason why I'm using these T-shaped participants in my workshops, you know, also looking into the thinking preferences. I like to have like really diverse teams together, because everyone can bring something to the table, and especially when it comes to like really complex problems or like really big design challenges, you know, you can't solve it by yourself, you know. That's also the reason why we're looking into like business ecosystem designs, and a lot of companies working together and creating one unique value proposition, because a single company doesn't have the capabilities, and they don't have the resources, they don't have the money, you know, to bring it to the market. That's the reason why we're trying to bring all these kind of things together. And I think it's always a combination. But you can still be a good designer by yourself, you know, making a good sketch about something, you know, making a design, a way of you're drawing something, you know, and this sometimes happen even, you know, for myself. So I do like kind of a drawing of a model, you know, in my book, for example, or a design of a concept like this problem to scaling growth framework you're seeing here at the moment, you know. So this kind of, you know, this has taken a lot of iterations about how we display it, how to make it tangible, you know, how to transport the message, you know. There were probably like 30 versions of this model before we had like a good idea, you know, how we bring the different elements together, how we have something displayed on one page, from the problem space over lean startup to like building the ecosystem and scaling something. And now it's stable because we had so many iterations before. So I'm using this now for the last 6 years in all my books, you know, kind of an introduction slide of what I'm talking, referencing back, looking where we're standing in the process. So I think it's both. It's first of all your initial idea, designing something, sketching something, having design, you know, and then of course you need also a lot of disciplines. For example, if you design a car, you know, you can make a nice sketch about this form, how it looks like, but finally you need an engine, you need like electric wires, you need tires, you need many other things, you know, and I think you need all these capabilities and to make it real, to build it, you know, and then of course you always have to partner up with other individuals or companies to make it real and happening, right?
Indeed. And you talk very much about, there are two M's in your diagrams. One is the minimum viable product, and the other one is why the word minimum? This is an agile world, and I always am fascinated. Why is agile sort of pitching at the minimum all the time? I am afraid of the minimum sometimes. Sort of minimum quality usually means we're going to lose what we have. We become the Soviet Union, sort of. We've got the minimum there, and so why is that word always prominent? It imbibes agile thinking. Is there a reason for that, or should we throw that word away?
No, I think we should keep it, and especially when it comes to like the minimum viable ecosystem, because the MVE, right? And if you can imagine, you know, building an ecosystem, whatever, with 2,000 partners, you know, creating a totally new experience, creating like a huge IT platform, you can spend easily hundreds of millions of US dollars or francs, whatever, in building it, creating it, you know, bring it to the market, you know. And then basically you don't know if this works or not, you know. That's the reason why we're trying to have the minimum viable product or minimum viable ecosystem, bring just a couple of actors together, you know. We're testing the value streams, we're testing the value proposition, we're looking how they work together. And if this works and we have optimized everything, we're ready to scale. And then basically we have less risk, you know, of failing on a later stage if we're trying out things on a small scale. So minimums for me, more like, you know, having the same idea as it would be big one, a big idea, big platform, big ecosystem, but you're just using the elements required to test it and to make it happen in a functional way, you know. And if this works, you know, I mean, then actually we have another risk level of implementing, because otherwise you would just build, you know, and this was happening in the old days. You were spending all the money, no custom interviews, no interaction design, nothing. You put like 100 function into the place, you launched on the market, and then basically, big surprise, no one was buying your product, service, or whatever you're offering. And this is basically the idea behind, you know, making it small, saves the resources, you know, try to fail early, you know, and then optimize, and then basically have the best version in the market to scale and to make it bigger.
So failing often and failing quickly results in a minimum, which is a nice point you're making. But what confuses me is that once you now have scaled up, and you need to retain the momentum. You seem to talk about almost if you stay still, you will disappear. Essentially, I think that is part of the angst almost at the end of the book, and therefore the minimum, the new minimum, is more than the previous minimum. Is what I'm saying. So at one point, this will build into a quality product, and the minimality is just the testing, essentially.
Exactly. It's a testing.
Is that where we're going? That is a continuous. A bigger burden.
I think you know, there's two things. First of all, you do it in the early stage, you know, to get something on the market, you know, to be quick, you know, to have like not so much risk in building something no one likes to use. That's the first step. And then basically all these elements are really dynamic nowadays. If you're having a large ecosystem, you know, especially what we have seen over the last 15 months, 60 months with the lockdowns, you know, customer behaviors are changing. So you have to adapt with your offerings, with your experiences, the function continuously, you know, and then basically you have to make decisions. And if you're building then a lot of small minimum viable products, you know, while you experience these new customer behaviors, you know, you can test while you go, you know, and then decide, you know, look, now we see after 50 months of lockdowns, you know, people engage differently with insurance companies, with banks, with retailers, you know, and then basically put the best solution into place. And before the session started, we were talking about the new world of universities, you know, saying, look, in the past, this was kind of the old way of teaching, reading out of the book, you know, and now everything was digital and we're coming back to kind of a hybrid model. So the minimum viable kind of teaching element was testing over the last 60 months. What does work, you know, how to engage with people, having like even rules now to have the camera on, you know, how we interact, how we ask questions, all these things. And now basically we can take these elements, you know, to the new normal and say, wow, you know, we have learned out of the last 60 months that this setting works well in the virtual space. Other things didn't work at all. We have to go back in the physical space to work, to collaborate together. And this is now kind of the new way of building something. I think this was a quick round of minimum viable products and services for universities. And this will lead to a kind of a future experience for students as well.
So it feels like it's all about the incremental delivery and responding to the change. But I have a question, and actually two questions, if I could ask them. Is it right?
Yes,
so,
David, go for it.
It's a great book, and especially like this diamond here. It's quite interesting. But my question is, I was wondering, what would be the biggest challenges from practical point of view implementing system thinking for digital transformation, and what would you say they could be overcome? It would be a culture change, or having this no agile approach to the change when everything needs to be predicting ahead?
Yeah, I think the basic problem are the human beings and the organization, because, you know, we are trained in a different way and we are operating for years in a different way in large organizations, because a lot of politics, you know what to do to get promoted, you know how to get your bonus in the end of the year, you know, and these are all behaviors, you know, they're not building up on the mindset we need in design thinking, because in design thinking you try to fail, you know, you try to be agile, you collaborate with other business units, you know, and you're more like looking first in the problem space, you know, and take a little bit more time in the beginning before you start really building something. And basically a large organization is the opposite, you know, you know this phrase, you know, your boss is saying, please don't think too long about these things, bring a good solution, you know. In design thinking we do the opposite. We spend like 80% of the time looking into the problem space, you know, finding the appropriate problem, and then we start to build something, you know. And this is a big mind shift, you know, for organizations, that they allow people to explore the problem space first of all, then also collaborate across all these silos. And the concept I'm using is like team of teams, you know, so really kind of creating a unique team, you know, who has all the capabilities across the organization to build what you like to achieve. And this takes a lot of restructuring. This takes like new HR process. This takes a new leadership. But this also takes like from every single employee the willingness, you know, to leave the comfort zone, to change, you know, or to adapt a little bit kind of the thinking we are doing in this entire HR or design thinking mindset, you know. And I see kind of you have to learn it by doing it. So I'm usually applying project-based learning, that we have like real projects, you know, running them with the organization and facilitating. At the same time, we're using these tools, we're reflecting which tools are working better in which situation. And after a while, people get used to this behavior, and it becomes more like a routine using all these tools. And then over time, you know, people start to thinking and acting as we should do in design thinking. But it's a long process, so you can't change on any organization in like 2 weeks. Probably takes like 2, 3, 5, maybe 10 years, you know, that everyone is really kind of this flow. And I can encourage everyone just to live it up on a daily basis. So as a leader, as a manager, you know, live it up every single day, you know. And if you applying it, you know, your teams will also step into it and say, well, that's a good thing. And you not only talking about it, you're also kind of practicing it. And this is quite important, you know, to make it happen.
Okay, thank you. That's a great answer.
We have a question from Nadia. She's asking, how can we create a project ecosystem as against a business ecosystem? And is there a difference?
Mm-hmm. So, and just let me talk about business ecosystem design. So business ecosystem design is really the idea that you're creating a really unique core value proposition with different actors, different companies, and they delivering together, you know, with their capabilities, something to the end client, you know, or any client. And within organizations, you know, of course, there's always kind of the idea of like networked organizations, that you're bringing together different capabilities and you're bringing together different teams. And I think it's also quite nice concept, you know, to say, well, we have like a project organization and we know about all the skills and capabilities from each team member, from each project manager, and bringing together kind of the right skill set to make it happen. Because usually it's more like someone did it before, so he has to run the same projects, from my experience. It's someone who's kind of the expert in a specific field, you know, and you get all the experts together. But the problem is with bringing all the experts together, you get probably also the expert solution, but you're not getting anything kind of out of the box, you know, because you're usually applying routine, you're applying the same behavior, and you're getting like the same outcomes. But if you like to be more innovative, and it's also kind of idea in this project to come up with something new, you might have to apply different thinking preferences, different views, you know, collaborating even with companies and people outside of your organization. And then basically also radical innovation or change will happen, because otherwise you're sticking usually more to the routine than creating something new.
And you have this idea, I think, about oceans, different colored oceans, which I think are your ecosystems. On page 241, You mentioned the red ocean, existing markets. I'm reading from your book, strong competition where Apple, Sony, Nokia, LG, all these companies are there. We admire them, but there is a lot of competition there. And then you go to that blue ocean, which is undisputed markets, low level of competition. And you mentioned Dyson and Electrolux, which is quite physical. I'm hoping a robot will push the cleaning machines, but sort of that area. And then you've got this black ocean, which I think is the best, the one that you are visualizing, I believe, which is ecosystem-driven markets, impossible to compete.
Exactly.
And there you've got Apple again. Apple reappears on the other side, and it appears that Apple as a company is one that you sort of are using as an exemplar. You mentioned Steve Jobs was very, very good at capturing the idea or realizing that we've done enough thinking, now let's start converging. And then Apple appears many times. Now, we are members of the responsible project management group ourselves, and when I look at Apple, I am in awe of it, but I'm also worried about some things that are not sort of correct. And only yesterday, the governments, for example, are trying to at least take 15% of tax from them. So. Really what I'm trying to say is that there is a vision here, but the vision itself is not clear. There aren't any principles that guide your vision. And when you end up with robots in the end, Isaac Asimov comes to my mind when he started thinking about AI and writing iRobot and all that. He came with 3 rules. These 3 rules were very important. He was scared of his own idea. Essentially, and this is what I want to ask you, because in the agile world we are dealing with essentially a business problem and we're giving a business solution, but we are not asking ourselves, is this a responsible solution? Where are the principles or the ethics or the morals in this process? Because I can see you love the human being. There is no doubt about that, and it is all done in trust. But should there be any safeguards? This is my worry about your ideas sometimes, because they are successful. This is the thing. I am afraid of success.
Exactly. And I think you're absolutely right. There must be responsible growth, kind of a way, of applying things. I have put the Apple example, in 2016, because this was one of the first ecosystems really looking into like a black ocean. And while I'm taking Apple, I was working for a telecommunication company for a long time. So I was chief innovation officer with Swisscom. And my experience was a little bit kind of, out of the telco business, out of these kind of mobile phones, and I watched and observed, what happened to Nokia, Siemens, and all these platforms, and all of them had like app stores. There was an app store from Nokia, there was an app store from Siemens, and everyone else had like kind of systems, operating systems, and were going into the market. And finally, when you reflect now and look into the market right now, there are 2 operating systems, right? So it's Apple and Android. So basically 2 companies created a black ocean because there's no competition anymore. And this was by design. This was not like coincidence that Nokia was then bankrupt, and basically from the leading cell phone company into nothing. It was more like kind of, how the other players positioned themselves in the ecosystem, were building up relationship with developers, building up relationship with large enterprises, building up relationships with universities for education pieces. Apple nowadays is also quite strong in the B2B market, having kind of application for the business purpose. And I'm just saying, every company has a chance to design these ecosystems and designing a black ocean market. And your ambition must be to be like the leader with the black ocean, because otherwise you will just create Me Too products, not having first choice actors in the ecosystem. You're just doing something everyone else does. And I realize at the moment with ecosystem design, for example, with bank insurance companies, all of them creating the same ecosystem. So one example is everyone's trying to tap into like the the housing and living market, out of the insurance and banking perspective, saying, there's a lot of potential to bringing our banking insurance products. At the same time, we're a little bit closer to the end clients about their behavior and everything. But if everyone does the same and configuring the same ecosystem, it will be not successful. And someone will have a configuration about the system, say, I know exactly what are the customer needs, which kind of capabilities, which kind of technologies needed, and what kind of value proposition I have to give to them, to be successful. And this was happening basically with operating systems in the mobile market. And so there are many other examples about companies. They really design the system, putting the user in the center of the activities, and at the same time, applying system principles of being efficient, and then basically say succeeded. And I think it's more like kind of, you have to have the ambition to create the black ocean. I'm not saying, this is kind of the best way of doing it, because all of us, we know without competition, there's no market, there's like kind of weird things about power distance, about tax regulation, many other things. But if you're not having just, well, my point is just, if you don't have the ambition up front, to build these super ecosystems, with this kind of best capabilities in the world, you will just not be successful. This is kind of the way of thinking I'm applying. But there's always kind of a gray zone afterwards. If you're too powerful and you're using all the data for like things you shouldn't use, then of course, this is more like kind of the ethics of the leadership, and how to deal with your customer data and how to build trust over a long time than designing the system itself.
Indeed, beautiful. But I think you make it a prediction consciously or unconsciously, because you also talked about banks, because the next bit actually from the diagram that we have here is that you introduce a cryptocurrency sort of, and I'm taking that as a prediction of yours, that this is the future. Are you envisaging a future where data and big data is all powerful, does not belong to anyone, but is all powerful, and almost there are no rules in a good way? That is, we don't need rules, because we are always getting the best of that is possible. Is that what you're thinking, sort of this future? I am very scared of this beautiful future that you are creating. It is wondrous, but because you started from little goggles, we were creating little goggles and all that, and suddenly we are conquering the world in some respect, and the word revolution comes there, the word competition comes there, and it is a great leap for a playbook, and I think that is the power of your book. But
Exactly.
is there a check and a balance?
Yeah, there's a check and a balance. And first of all, I have a very positive way of looking into new technology. So for example, you mentioned like crypto and blockchain, distributed ledger technology. So for me, blockchain as a technology, is a great way of building decentralized ecosystems, because you can have like peer-to-peer transactions, they're quite safe, you can track the history, and when it comes to like the health system, when it comes to like transferring assets in the future, I think blockchain is really one of the key technology to make it very efficient. I have my own opinion about cryptocurrencies, especially now this hype again over the last weeks about Bitcoin, about what's happening. I see Bitcoin as an experiment at the moment. We're experimenting with a technology to put like something to exchange. I don't like the word like money for Bitcoin, because it's one way of testing a technology, and it's a proof. This experiment is successful because you can't hack it. It's operating. So now it's time to take this kind of technology to our central banks, and saying, look, we have a way to create like digital currencies. You can organize and manage some money flows in the future more easily, and also you can track back the history of money. I think there are a lot of benefits about this technology we're testing for over 10 years, going into the next kind of wave of implementing it on a more stable and on the right legal basis to go into the next level of applying technology. I think that's quite important. And for me, again, you know, experiments, you know, and then basically the real stuff afterwards, creating something more meaningful for our society.
Indeed, I'm just frightened of it. But as you say, it is a tested technology, and you are a technological determinist. That is very clear, and we have to harness what is coming up. Somewhere on page 241 in your book, when you're talking about this black ocean strategy, you have a sentence that existing rules are changed, new framework conditions are created, and an unfair advantage is built up and correspondingly used. And you've put the unfair advantage in inverted commas. This is a book club. Why did you put inverted commas?
Well, the thing is, you know, it's really kind of an unfair advantage or just seeing market opportunities. I mean, this is always kind of the play, you know, we have. And if you look into my book, I never use the word innovation, for example. You know, I'm always talking about market opportunities. Mm-hmm. You find probably the word innovation 2 times in the entire book, because the concept of innovation is something I don't understand, because, you know, people use it like many times, and for me it's like innovation something really totally new to the entire market, you know, and usually we don't see innovation so often. It's more like kind of putting existing things together, reinventing, you know, and building something out already existing. Of course, there's always kind of evolution, there's always kind of marketing, experience, many other things behind, but innovation is a big word, you know, and that's the reason I was saying in design thinking, you know, I'm searching for market opportunities, you know, bringing together the best capabilities, you know, advancing a little bit what's already existing, and then basically we can be successful, you know. And I think this is also something, you know, we should think about, you know, how we use the term innovation, you know, and what is really behind, or is it more like finding the right opportunity, the white spot, you know, to creating something for the moment being, you know, and getting the opportunity and your advantages, you know, you can take out in the market.
Indeed. Beautiful. Does anyone have any question or your example, your persona, one of your personas is building this example in the third part of a health service. And you paint this beautiful picture of essentially your data being where it is needed and therefore essentially saving lives. What I could not see, and again, I'm coming back to a moral question, is what are you designing here? Are you designing like a national health service that we have in Britain, which is not for profit? Are you designing Obamacare, which has or had problems and all that? Or are you designing a private BUPA sort of private health system? Because all three, I think, are potential solutions to this technologically very advanced big data world that you are pointing. Is there a steer here? Should there be a steer, or should we just wait until the next Apple comes with the idea and respect it?
Actually, all these examples are always out of real projects I was running, I was engaged with, and with the health records, this was basically something we did here in Switzerland. You know, it was a proof of concept about having a decentralized system for health records and also small applications for like for e-prescription and many other things. And so the learning was a little bit, first of all, you know, we like to take the patient, you know, the customer in the center of the activity. So first of all, the patient or the customer should own the data. You know, this was the first principle we applied, saying, you know, if you have health data, you know, you should decide what you like to do with it. Because if I have cancer, for example, you know, I have a keen interest to selling it to any pharmaceutical company in this world, that I get a treatment sooner or later, right? So this is my personal interest. But at the moment, I don't have the chance to trade, sell, or even give for free my data, because it's kind of locked in the most countries in a health record, you know. The physicians have access, you know, or maybe other people, but it's not like an open platform. I can say, look, I'm the owner of my data. You know, if I go to the hospital, I can give allowance to a physician for 2 hours to look into my record, but later on there's no interest. On the other hand, if I like to sell my data, because I had kind of a special disease, I got a special treatment and there's a lot of value into my data, I should have the freedom to selling my data. And at the same time, if I like to give it to someone else to research, any university, anyone else, I should also have the right to give the data to someone else. And this is more kind of the system of, that the data belongs to us, and with like new technology. And again, you can apply here distributed ledger technology, blockchain, to track these things, to give access. And this would also help, that I'm more responsible for my own data than someone else is just storing them somewhere and have no idea what's going to happen with it. So it's not like driven from kind of a state health system from a private company. It was purely customer centric, what I like to do with my data and how I feel good, what should happen with it. And of course it should be efficient, because I think right now in the health system, every step we do in form of digitalization, it's increasing the cost, It's not like we're saving costs, it's getting more and more, and every step is adding up, it's not saving. So it's also quite important to build system with a lot of savings and at the same time, have the data with the patients.
Indeed, thank you. Thank you very much. Karen has a question. Maybe Himanshu, you can read Karen's question because she's from an iPhone. I don't know.
Oh, she's from iPhone. That was a funny one. Great.
So Karen, there's a question. Are there any cases in design thinking when agile will not work?
I think we have to distinguish between agile and design thinking because there's a big misunderstanding. A lot of people think agile is design thinking, and then basically they come up with this nice capability builds also in large companies saying we do like this agile training, and you have your kind of final idea and then you do iterations and you build it very quickly and cheap and then it's on the market. But design thinking is happening before, it's about looking at the problem space, interviewing the customer, validating already your assumption without having any prototype, and agile is for me like the way of developing something in an agile iterative way, and this is a totally different things. And people are really confused because a lot of consultancy companies say, this is agile and design thinking is part of it, but usually they're not tackling design thinking. So when I coming in companies, I'm always saying, look, the two things, we do design thinking, and then we do agile development, and then basically later on you can scale, you can make it lean in production processes, whatever it is. But for me, it's 3 buckets, and we use kind of similar methodologies and tools sometime, but the focus is totally different. So one is focusing on the problem space, the other one is building something quick, without wasting resources, and then the lean part, operating it lean is also kind of our own discipline by itself.
And you do a very considerable mapping on lean, and this your way you use numbers is it makes it easy for me to read sort of because you have broken everything into pieces and then you say this piece fits with that piece and that is how it fits. So thank you for that, especially on the lean stuff and that marriage. There is a diagram you've got on page 302 where you claim the data scientist is the sexiest job in the world. I don't know if you remember that little diagram with someone drunk over some binary numbers. But you do again have this joke essentially, and yet you make a very important point on that. So anyone who has the book, page 302, because you are talking about data and big data and data analytics there. And you do put in the human back into the picture if you ever took him away. I'm not saying you took him away, but because you say the data gives you the what, but then it is the humans who know the why. And I think that diagram there shows your intention and the fact that we will harness, and if all we want from technology is to quickly give us the what, and then we will see the patterns, we will actually work out and all that. I believe that that picture there is quite a nice one. And even though it appears to be the most silly, if you wish, in very big inverted commas, a silly picture. I don't know, did you come up with this diagram, or was there an illustrator? Because I think it's a clever figure.
Two things, first of all, it's coming out of a project, I was doing with my former employer, because we were building up big data analytics capabilities, and we couldn't find any data scientists on the market. So I was going back like 12 years ago, 11 years ago to my university saying, we need data scientists, and they were saying, what are you talking about? We not even know what a data scientist is doing. We're not having people teaching them, we have nothing, So it's taken like 6 or 7 years, to put up a course at university to get like data scientists out after like a 2 years program. But it was just a long lead time, to get these people out. And now what I'm doing in these data scientist classes, I'm combining big data analytics with design thinking, exactly to do what we see in this illustration. We have to understand the human behavior, and then we have to enrich, and validate and look into data at the same time, and now we have the power. 20 years ago, there was a little bit of research we could do, and the design thinking path was probably very strong because there was not any other method in big data analytics to apply. But nowadays we have the technology and we have the data. So I'm always saying, combine both views, the big data analytics view, but also go back and see what the natural behavior is. And then if you bring both things together, you're much stronger in your arguments, in your point of views, in your prototyping, your predictions. And this is really powerful. The only problem is, we have like 2 totally different kind of characters working together. So you have one, these design thinking, creative minds, and also these guys doing the data and statistics, right? They're not seeing the daylight, they're not going out, they don't speaking up. And then basically they sitting together in one room. And I did experiments in the beginning. I was creating meetups, saying we have like 3 beer chips, a few are data scientists this day was like data admin, statistics, come in, and I was inviting people from the design thinking community, and I put them in one room and observed what's happening, right? And that's the reason why we came up with this model saying, we need kind of a combined toolbox. We have to understand where both of us standing in the process, like the data scientists and people applying design thinking. And then basically you don't collaborate in the space because this does not work. Everyone goes out, does a job, and then, but you have to know when to come back, talk to each other, exchanging knowledge, visualizing data, showing like the input from the interviews, from observations, from the design thinking part, and then basically you decide about the next steps. Yeah. And this was kind of this idea behind, that we bring these 2 disciplines close together. And my experience is when I look into design teams applying those things, they get much better results than just applying big data analytics or just applying design thinking.
Indeed, that is a beautiful picture, and I think what you are creating by putting these 2 people together is your T person. You're broadening the view, the point of view of both sides just by putting them together. That is beautiful, and that also answers my team's question earlier on, that when they're working alone, they do not produce as much as if they are together. And the clever thing that you as a P person sort of you came up with the idea of putting them in the same room and sort of let them be and open the door so that they could go in and out whenever they liked. And I think that is the essence, much of the essence of your book, and the principle that you are empathizing with people, and you are essentially saying, just let people work just create the environment for them, and work will be done. Ideas will appear, because this is what we do as humans. You're almost making a thesis that we've moved so slowly from 2000 BC to today, precisely because we did not have these design thinking environments, and therefore each one of us individually came up, and every now and then one of us came up with a eureka moment. But now there is an acceleration, both because the data is more and your process is there to capture that data. I think that is the view, the vision that I take from your playbook.
Perfect. That's
I
a
like the
great
word
vision, you
playbook.
know. And now it's time to apply it. You know, I think that's always about reading a book,
Indeed.
you know, and a playbook should be applied, you know, and test out things, you know, and do your own learnings, make your own notes about it. And this, I can encourage everyone, you know, apply it, try it out. You know, that's the only way how to figure it out, how to get good results, you know. But only reading the book is nice, but it's not giving the full potential.
Thank you, Michael.
Totally.
Yes. No, thank you. And I think you've made that slightly easier for people to implement by giving them the discount on the templates that they can use, which is I have now mentioned on the screen. Hopefully people can see that.
Let's expand on the templates quickly, because it's out of the second book, the design thinking toolbox, you know, and we were coming back, you know, with feedback from our readers saying why you don't have like more structured way of explaining, especially for beginners, university classes, large groups, you know. And then we decided really to come up with these templates similar to the lean canvas with the 1, 2, 3 kind of numbering, and saying, look, this is kind of a first guidance if you're applying this the first time to get more confident about using it. And then basically we had a huge hype over the last 60 months in this virtual environment because everything was online and everyone was looking for templates. So basically we had like 50 design thinking templates as PDFs, and people uploaded and you're ready to go. This was kind of, you know, kind of prediction already about COVID-19, the changing of behavior. So we didn't know about when we created them because they were really for like printing out and using in workshop styles. But then we had like really kind of a different use case, and it was coincidence. This was not designed, and it just happened.
No. Thank you for that. And once again, I mean, we are slightly over our time, but many thanks for coming here and answering our questions here today. So are there any parting thoughts that you might want to say to our users, our listeners here?
Yeah, well, thank you for joining in. I think we're overrunning already time-wise, you know, and so thanks. And if you have any questions, please reach out via LinkedIn. You know, you can contact me, you can ask questions, you know, if you have questions about these concepts, you know, happy to get feedback, you know, and please, you know, that's the only way how to figure it out, to ask questions, you know, and so I'm always trying to answer all of them, you know, sometimes takes more than 5 minutes to answer, but usually I'm coming back, you know, and have at least kind of a way of explaining how it might work. And then it's always a good starting point for building up kind of a different relationship and explore the space.
Well, once again, many thanks, Michael. And for the audience, I mean, this is the next book that we are doing, Brain Rules by Dr. John Medina. I have uploaded the events on the Meetup and on the LinkedIn site. Apart from that, we have a very exciting year, actually, in terms of the books that we are doing. We will be doing Idea Book version 2 by Frederick Harrion, Hooked by Nir Ayal, and Dan Brown's next untitled book on visual thinking. So please stay tuned, and please keep sending us feedback on how we can improve this. And thank you all for joining. Thanks again, everyone, for participating as well.
All right. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.